Notice the first thing, the Sahaba understood musical instruments are instruments of shaitan. The Prophet ﷺ, he turned to him, he said, let them be, it's the day of Eid. He didn't say, no, they're not the instruments of shaitan. He didn't say they're halal. He just said, for this day, for these girls, let them play. Now, I'm going to mention a couple of things where people make a kind of shubha, a doubt, to try to get away from this. They say, well, there is a hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ was sitting and little girls were playing the daf and he allowed it, so that means music's halal. No. We always have an a general rule, and a khas, a particular exception. For example, dhuhr is prayed 4. But if you're traveling, you pray it 2. But that's an exception to the rule for traveling, not for all times. You can't be sitting at home praying 2, saying, well, there's a hadith Rasulullah prayed 2. Well, you have to look at the situation. This hadith, as reported in Al-Bukhari, from Aisha radiyallahu anha, mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and he sat down, and there were little girls that were playing the daf, talking about one of the battles of Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned his head. Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, he got upset. What did he say? He said the instruments of shaitan in the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Notice the first thing, the Sahaba understood musical instruments are instruments of shaitan. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he turned to him, he said, let them be, it's the day of Eid. He didn't say, no, they're not the instruments of shaitan. He didn't say they're halal. He just said, for this day, for these girls, let them play. So what does that mean? That the general rule is that these are instruments of shaitan that are haram. The exception to that rule is for the day of Eid, or as another hadith will mention about weddings and things, for girls to play the daf, only the daf, not guitars and all that, would be permissible. That's an exception. That is their hadith, and we accept that, as Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said as well. And this is supported by the hadith that Ibn Majah and At-Tirmidhi have mentioned from a reliable chain, where he says the difference between halal and haram, meaning talking about the weddings, is the one that is with the daf and sound, meaning that if you play the daf with the sound to announce the wedding, this is halal for that situation, not for all situations. So understanding this, when we look at from the earliest scholars, from the Sahaba and Tabi'un onwards, musical instruments in general are haram. No doubt to that. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Yes. At times like Eid or weddings, if little girls sit and play the daf for a little enjoyment, there is nothing wrong with that. But you can't translate that to mean that you're going to go throw on Metallica and throw on NWA and throw on these things and just listen to them and call it halal. No. You don't play with the religion. Now, there is another doubt people put forward. They say, well, music's everywhere. What do we got to do? Put corks in our ears when we're walking through a mall? No. There's a difference between hearing something that you don't intend to hear and something that you attentively go and listen to, right? Meaning that if you're going to go for a job interview and you're sitting in the lobby and there's music playing, you didn't go for that intention. And if you have no power to turn it off, then you are not held responsible for that which is out of your control. That's just something in the passing. And it being everywhere doesn't make it halal. Gossiping is everywhere. Lying is everywhere. Women dressed inappropriately is everywhere. Any mall you go to go buy clothes, or any shopping center you go to buy milk, you're going to have women that are not dressed appropriately and men that are not dressed appropriately. Does that mean that it's halal? No. You don't make that excuse. You do your best. If you go somewhere and there's a poster of a woman or a man not dressed appropriately, and you happen to see it because you walk in the store, that's not a sin on you. You look away. But that's different from you going and searching up a website and watching videos or something. Don't equate the two. The same with music. You go to a mall and there's music playing in the background. You go shop, do what you got to do, get out. That's not your sin. But if you go to Spotify or whatever, Apple Music or YouTube Music, and you start listening to songs, that's different. Now, the next shubha that I will deal with. A lot of people do listen to music. That is true. And that doesn't make you kafir. Like, we're not saying that this is an issue of kufr. But don't call it halal. If you have a personal weakness, sometimes maybe you're feeling down and you throw some blues on or, whatever. That's between you and Allah. People sin, they make mistakes. Make tawbah to Allah. Hopefully between salawat and the good deeds that you do will erase these bad deeds. But don't halalify it. Don't try to change the deen of Allah. Don't try to take away from the Quran. Don't weaken ahadith in al-Bukhari. This is important. We all have sins and mistakes. But to justify haram and call it halal, that's a line you shouldn't cross.